dive into your spiritual practice, but 40 days has a significant meaning, or it's a significant number in spiritual traditions. So I'm excited that you're here. And today we're going to be welcoming Shahabuddin David Less, who has been with the feast for 40, not for 40 days. Yes, I remember 40 days of meditations for 14 years. He used to record 40 days of meditation. And we still have them. If you want, they're available 24/7. You can get them on the Feast for the Soul website, feastforthesoul.org. And I want to share that he has been teaching meditation, and he has been promoting peace around the world for 45 years. And he's a senior teacher in the Sufi order. And he's also the founding member of the, I'm not sure if I say this right, Abrahamic Reunion, a group of leaders, spiritual leaders in the Holy Land to create harmony, as a living example of harmony among the world's religions. And he leads meditations. He was just telling us he's leading a 40-day silent spiritual practice period in Austin, Texas, coming up. And I'm sure he's doing a whole lot of things, as he's the co-director of the Rising Tide. He's also the author of a book, Universal Meditations, Recipe for a Peaceful Mind. David, welcome. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know when we were just getting started, we were talking about how there's a big shift in the energy and consciousness itself. And I'm going to mute myself, and maybe you'll speak to that a little bit.
Sure. First of all, thank you all for doing the organizational part, and thank you all for showing up. I assume that it's okay to repeat basically the origin of the 40 days. In the tradition of Sufism and in many other paths, the idea is that if you can hold a practice for 40 days, it will have a profound effect. And in traditional Sufism, the 40-day period is linked to 40 weeks in the womb of our mothers. And what we hope to be doing is to magnify the energy that each of us feels individually, so that we can move forward rather than, frankly, just being in stasis, standing still. And I might add, I have 6 grandchildren aged 7 to 11, and I teach them meditation by Zoom. They're all over the country. And when I observe my grandchildren and other kids, they are already manifesting the next level of human evolution. And we have the responsibility to midwife the coming generation, and to midwife, frankly, the coming generations, because so much of who we are now is actually absorbed before we ever get to planet Earth. So we of course develop our character from the environment we experience here, but our nature is something we bring with us. And so the feast and other events like this are not just working on us and our spiritual practice, but on the transformation of consciousness that souls coming in will experience. And in that way, we have real evolution, not just physical evolution, but the evolution of consciousness. And for myself, my own practice, one thing that I do is I look ahead. And I don't look ahead in my life. I feel like there's so much in the universe that's guiding all of our lives. But I do look ahead 25 years, 50 years, 100 years as a practice. And not to prophesize and not to see where the stock market is going or anything of that nature, but to really understand what I and what we, what impressions we can leave here that will help human evolution, which is a real force to move forward. And you mentioned some of the work that my colleagues and I do, especially in Israel and Palestine, and now Israel, Palestine, and really the Emirates and Oman and Saudi Arabia and Lebanon, Jordan, to bring about a more evolutionary viewpoint of peace. And I think that um, we are being asked in a funny way to give up our attachment to the spiritual path because too many of us attach too much importance to the form of the path and not enough importance to the formless. And the formless is the force that really creates the future because it's not formed yet. And how do we do that? Well, we kind of keep one eye on our path, whatever that path may be. But the rest of our consciousness is free to experience whatever the infinite consciousness, the supreme consciousness is trying to convey to us. And it always is there, and it's always trying to convey. It's not like the intelligence, comes and goes in waves. It's always there. The only difficulty is when we, by distraction, turn our back on this awareness that is ever present within each human being. And it's not for some special people, it's for all human beings, for all of nature, frankly. You mentioned that I'm going to lead a retreat. I'm leading a retreat for 6 people. That's the most that I can do personally on a silent retreat for 40 days. And the key to that retreat is that it's in nature. And nature is by far the greatest scripture that's ever been given to humanity. Much better than any book. It's the real book of the infinite. And as we go silently and experience not just the beauty of nature, but the harmony of nature, the love that is inherent in nature, it transforms us. It makes us instruments for the future of evolution, and it transforms the filtering aspect that all souls go through in different ways to greater and lesser degrees before incarnating on the earth. So, although I love the feast and I love that we're offering 40 days of practice, just a word of caution to not get attached to the practice. I do practices that I've done for 50 years, but if I needed to give them up tomorrow, I would. And I wouldn't feel, oh my gosh, I'm really losing something. Life has changed. This is the very essence of the message of the Buddha, that life here is change. And although it's wonderful to be transcendent, it's also wonderful to be present. And being present is taking us out of the world of our own limited concepts and being present in the evolution of consciousness. I've had an interesting last month. I hope it's all right if I speak personally, but 3 of my great mentors suddenly left the planet within days of each other. And I'll tell you who they are. They're not famous. One is a wonderful yogi and teacher in India, wonderful naturalist. His name Swami Sundaranand, and he died at 95 in Gangotri. He actually died in Dehradun and was brought to Gangotri in the Himalayas a few weeks ago. And I had known him since 1983. And he was in the body and is quite a evolved human being and a wonderful mentor of mine. On the same day in Israel, the greatest peace builder that I've ever met, Ilyas Jabor, who is a Christian Arab living in Israel. He actually taught in the States, at the university here, but is a third generation peacemaker. And he left his body the same day that Swamiji did. And then shortly thereafter, and I knew Ilyas since the year 2000, and any major decision that I had to make about the Abrahamic reunion, I would call him. And I wouldn't say, Ilyas, could you give me advice? I would say, frankly, Ilyas, tell me what to do. I'll do it. I trusted him extensively, as did most people in Israel. He was the proponent of traditional Islamic peacemaking, which is called sulha. And then the last is someone I've known for over 40 years, Dr. Abdulaziz Saeed, who was the head of the International Relations Department at American University, and someone who was so realized and so humble and so trusted by all sides in the Middle East. A very, very unusual and rare human being. And I met him, as I said, over 40 years ago. And it's very awakening for me as kind of a young kid here. I'm only 76, to realize that so many of my mentors really are not alive anymore. I only have one more, who's a Native American man in on the reservation out west. And that means that all of us, when the great ones leave, all of us have the opportunity to uplift our consciousness and take on more responsibility, but not what we think of, not the burden of responsibility, but in a sense, the joy of it, that we are growing and we are part of the process. And, you know, back to my grandchildren, I always tell them what it was like when I was a kid, because they're so shocked that there's been so much change. And I always say, you haven't seen anything yet. The change is getting faster. We are being more able to connect with each other. And that's the goal. I mean, the individual isolationism and the collective isolationism is anti-evolutionary. And there will be a time, not too far in the future, when we'll be really quite proficient at communicating with each other silently, and language, as beautiful as it is, will begin to diminish. And people will be upset about that, but that's natural too. And we like change, but not too fast and not too slow. And understand that evolution is a forward force and there's a corresponding backward force. So what are the tools that are going to unite us? Meditation, japa, prayer, mantra, chanting, because as we speak less, our output of verbal energy will become that much more powerful, and you won't have people babbling on like I am today. Each word will be succinct and powerful. So those three, and then the fourth one is perhaps the most important, and the fourth tool, and I'm using the word consciously, is kindness. As we become more naturally kind to each other, naturally kind to the inhabitants who co-inhabit Earth with us, our consciousness will evolve quite rapidly. I'm not a great believer in political systems or economic systems. I'm a firm believer in consciousness, and as consciousness clears, systems evolve. Systems don't evolve consciousness. Consciousness evolves systems. So I think, you know, I have the ability to babble on endlessly, but I'm going to stop it here. If anyone has a question, you can put it in the chat, and if I can answer it in under 15 seconds, I will. I don't see anybody typing, so I'm going to move on. Now we're ready.
We'll have time for questions at the end of your
Oh,
practice as
good,
well. So
good.
thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Sarah. I was not really paying attention when you were explaining everything. I have a controlled schizophrenic mind. It goes to a lot of different places, and I try and just pick out the minimal that I need from everything. Probably goes against what most people think of as spirituality, but it really seems to work. So I thought we would start a practice, and after all of my conversation about free form, this practice actually has a very clear form. It's a meditation of maybe a quarter of an hour or 20 minutes, and it is to purify the physical heart. Now, in Buddhism, we really believe that the heart is the seat of the mind. And in Sufism, we also believe that. In Christian mysticism, we also believe that. In Kabbalah, we also believe that. And certainly in yoga, we also believe that. So there is, the paths agree on 99% of everything, just like the religions do, and they find 1% to disagree on. But I guess that's human nature up to a point. But the heart, the physical heart, is the seat of something. And then, of course, there's the spiritual heart in the right breast and the secret heart in the center of the breast, and all three really comprise the heart chakra. And if what I'm speaking about, if you don't know what I'm talking about, find someone who does and they'll explain it to you. But the heart, the physical heart, because it is the seat of the mind, also holds negative impressions. And impressions come not just from human interaction. There can be impressions on chairs in a room. There could be impressions in the air. There could be impressions from mind to mind. And the heart picks it all up. And as it takes more and more without getting purification, it becomes heavier and heavier. So this practice, this meditation, will help to purify the heart. You don't have to do it every day. You don't have to do it every week. You don't have to do it if you don't want. But when it comes to your consciousness, really, really give it a try. And you don't have to stick to the form that I'm using. You can create whatever form works for you. But I would ask all of us to either sit up with our backs straight, or if you want to do this lying down, that's also fine. I have no preference. And before I begin any meditation, I take the first few moments to observe the flow of my physical breath. And I try and experience the energy, not just the physicality of my breath, but the energy of my breath. What energy is riding on my breath? In the same way that electrical energy rides on the physical wires, but it's the energy that is moving. Well, there's energy that rides on breath. And as I observe the physical breath, I observe it go into the nose, and I can feel that, but I make sure that the physical breath is going fully into the lungs. So I use my consciousness to feel it go through the windpipe and fully expand the lungs. And then I feel the lungs contract and the expulsion of CO2 and other waste gases. So I'm feeling the physicality of the breath and the energy carried on the breath. Now, because the breath is energy, it can be directed by consciousness, or what we would call willpower. So imagine, and you do this by using your creative imagination, imagine that you can direct the energy of the breath right now to your feet. Just send the energy to your feet. And what our consciousness, our willpower is doing is not only directing the energy to our feet, but making our feet more aware and able to experience energy. So it's a combination of the two. Now, without moving your hands, direct the energy to your hands. Let the feet be and direct the energy to our hands. And again, the energy is moving towards our hands, and our hands are more receptive, more able to receive the energy because we've made our hands more conscious. Now, always a good one because we have a tendency to both underuse and overwork our brain. So send the energy to your brain, your physical brain, not your mind. Don't stress, just relax. Some of you are trying way too hard. It's just a gentle, subtle direction. And you may feel the brain relaxing. And in that relaxed state, it is energized. Now we're going to move the energy to the physical heart in the left breast. Just use your gentle willpower. Make the physical heart more able to feel and allow the energy to be amplified and directed towards the heart. Don't worry about chakras or anything else. Just very gently, the muscle that keeps pumping, that keeps us alive, just send energy to the heart. Now the heart receives blood from through the veins and sends that blood out again through the arteries. And coming into the heart, there is a major vein, going out a major artery. And what we're going to do now with our imagination is we're going to cut those tubes. Don't be afraid. You'll put them back together again, and I promise you won't have a heart attack. Just cut those tubes with your willpower, with the power of your mind, your creative imagination. And there might be some smaller attachments. Just cut everything so that the heart is floating freely in the left breast. You don't have to see it. Some people don't visualize well. It doesn't matter. Just imagine it. That your heart is now just floating freely. Now, around the heart, there is a translucent membrane called the pericardium that really holds the shape of the heart. And that pericardium also can hold impressions that we don't need anymore, thoughts, feelings. So just very gently kind of cut the membrane and just take it off the heart. Just leave it in your consciousness, but the heart has no protection whatsoever now. And the heart is kind of mango shaped, with the point at the bottom broader at the top. Now send a message to your heart. And just tell your heart, for the moment you're floating freely. Feel the connection between consciousness and your physical heart. And now you want to slowly turn the heart. It doesn't matter which way, any way that you do it, so that the bottom, the point, is pointing upward towards your head. And the broader part of the heart, which is at the top, will now be at the bottom. And you can do this. Don't worry. You don't have to see it. Just intend it. And then the final step is to feel the pull of gravity on your body. So feel planet Earth pulling your body to it. Gravity is a conscious force leading all towards the center point. And as gravity pulls the body, let gravity, which has consciousness, pull whatever is heavy from your upside down heart. You don't have to see them. You don't have to know memories. You don't have to wonder what the impressions are. And please don't direct it towards a certain event. Just let the consciousness of gravity pull heaviness from your physical heart. And it pulls it into the earth and into the very core of the earth where it ceases to exist. It's a very natural process if we let it. Don't try. For many, it's easier to feel as you exhale. You can feel heaviness leaving your heart. Now, don't worry if you don't feel that. Some do, some don't, but the practice seems to work either way. Now, very slowly, incrementally, using your willpower, turn the heart again so that the point is pointing downward and the broad part is at the top. And you might feel that the heart is very tender. It doesn't have the pericardium on yet. And it's lighter, so it's very, very sensitive in this state. Let it feel that sensitivity. Don't protect it. Now let the pericardium, that translucent membrane, wrap itself around the heart. And as the heart has let go of impressions, so has the pericardium. For those of you who know Chinese medicine, you know the pericardium is critical to the health and awareness of the body and the mind. And finally, attach the vein, the artery. Let the heart be firmly seated in the left breast. And let us take the last minute or two of this meditation and offer gratitude to our heart. It never rests. Now become very aware of your physical body. And the connection between the heart and the mind, not the brain, the mind. The brain is the instrument of the mind. So we'll end this meditation, and when you're ready, just gently open your eyes. It's nice for us to be all together and share in this together. So thank you. Now I kind of hate to go into the inquiring mind, but if there are any questions, let's hear them. Let's hear